Good morning. Kind of bad news for the RCMP in British Columbia, and certainly bad news for Don Ross, the Mayor of Surrey, because the official word from the Solicitor General of Canada, a man by the name of Perrin Beatty, is that none of the 38 Mounties who left the force and want to come back again and help fill the vacancies can, my interpretation, be hired in any way, shape or form at the moment. The problem seems to be in the recruiting policies of the RCMP, in that if you don't meet the criteria, there ain't no way, or almost no way, as a unilingual Anglophone that you can get even back into the RCMP. First, if you want into the Mounties today, you got to be a woman, they need women. You got to be Native Indian, they need Native Indians. You got to be bilingual, they need bilingual. Then comes Francophone, and then comes unilingual Anglophone. Anglophone. This is not an attack on bilingualism. This is a pathetic attempt by me to explain the complicated policies of the RCMP, which nobody in British Columbia seems to understand. You'll remember yesterday, however, I went first to our Attorney General Brian Smith on this problem of the retired Mounties.
We got 115 vacancies, and they're going to have to move on them.
115 vacancies. There are 38 officers, most of whom will be qualified and they're willing to return to the force, and they won't touch them yet.
Well, I think they'll touch them. I think that the policy is going to be flexible. This is the impression I get, but you should ask Mr. Beatty this when he arrives today.
Are you prepared to hire any of the 38 officers willing to rejoin the force for the vacancies in BC?
We're prepared as long as they meet the criteria. If people
your answer's got to be no.
If people are saying, are we prepared to give special privileges to one group who are former members of the force, the answer is no.
Now you can decide yourself when you see my complete interview with Perrin Beatty what in fact he said. I think he said no. In the studio this morning I have, however, Peter Bazowski, the acting Ombudsman of British Columbia. Now, Mr. Bazowski is, to say the least, a fascinating figure. He used to be Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP. He was the man who cleared up the mess in the General Hospital a number of years ago on a special assignment. He was Deputy Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs, Deputy Minister of Health, and when he was appointed the acting ombudsman, he came under a barrage of attacks which described him as a man appointed to do government dirty work. He'd take orders from the top. In fact, a social credit hitman. He's been in office now as acting ombudsman since the 1st of July. And we'll see how Mr. Bazowski is getting on when we interview him in the program. Then I come to a very delicate subject. You may have noticed, if you're a keen observer, and some of you are quite bright, that I have stayed away from the ferment and the violence in the East Indian and the Sikh community in British Columbia, and I've done that for a reason. I'm not going to be accused of whipping up fervors either side, but you are entitled to get a feeling of the temper of what the devil is going on in the Sikh community, because none of us likes to see this potential violence. So I have here two spokesmen. One is Manmohan Singh, who represents the International Sikh Youth Federation. And the other is Ujjal Dosanjh, whom I think I can describe as, he is a lawyer, a moderate, a spokesman for the more moderate side of the Sikh community. And we're going to talk to them calmly and quietly this morning and see if it makes any sense at all to non-Sikhs. But off the top, you're going to meet the convoluted but very charming Perrin Beatty on the subject of the RCMP and their incredible shortage of members, vacancies in British Columbia after the break. First, I must explain. Mr. Heinrich, the Minister of Education, was to be on this morning, but we got a phone call late yesterday that he was unable to come because he's not feeling very well today. So he'll be here as soon as he possibly can. Now, in the Mountie situation, there is an element of bilingual policy involved in this. And it would seem to me off the top it's because of the restriction of the criteria to join the Mounties that we are so short of Mounties in British Columbia. 115 vacancies right now. I went down yesterday after I interviewed Brian Smith and I put a series of questions to the Solicitor General. Mr. Beatty, are you going to order the Commissioner of the RCMP to hire some of the experienced ex-officers available to fill some of the 115 vacancies in detachments in this province?
I guess what you're asking me is, would we have special rules for people who are former members of the RCMP, which wouldn't apply to other people? The answer is no.
You have had special rules for former members until recently.
Yeah, well, I think what we're saying now, what the force itself is saying, is that it wants to upgrade the qualifications for anybody coming into the force. And the real issue then becomes, should you give special privileges for somebody who's a former member of the force, or should you say that with somebody starting again, that the same rules apply to him as apply to anyone else?
You had a system whereby if an officer was out of the force for a year or two, he could apply, and he got approval before he went away to come back into the force. Are you going to allow that again?
What I want to see is have the same rules apply to everybody. If somebody is applying from scratch, if he's a former member of the force, if he's somebody applying for the first time, have the same set of criteria. The force itself decided, I guess before I came along, that it was time to begin to upgrade the qualifications of people coming into the force. And I think that it would be viewed as being very unfair by other potential applicants if you had special provisions for somebody who used to belong.
Let me ask you a very blunt question. This is not against the policy of bilingualism. Do you now accept an application from a unilingual Anglophone to join the RCMP?
Yes.
I'm told to the contrary that now you don't.
No, you've been told wrong. There's nothing that would forbid that from happening.
What are the preferred criteria for the RCMP at the moment?
At the present time, obviously, if somebody meets other criteria, such as females. Females are seriously underrepresented in the RCMP.
Females, Native Indian,
Natives,
bilingual,
again, very seriously underrepresented. The case of bilingual people, that's one of the criteria as well. It's an advantage, but it is not a requirement.
Is it correct that a unilingual Francophone can be taught French, but a unilingual Anglophone cannot be taught French after enlistment in the RCMP?
No. You can have, in both cases, you could have people joining the RCMP and receiving language training.
Are you aware there are 115 vacancies in RCMP detachments in British Columbia?
Yes, I am, and I'm also aware, Jack, that by beginning of April of next year, we'll have all of those filled.
Are you aware that there are 38 ex-officers of the RCMP, fully qualified and trained, who could step into the jobs now?
I think we go back to the first question that you asked, and that's should there be special rights given to somebody who's a former member of the force, or when the force itself decides that it's important to upgrade entrance qualifications, should the same rules apply to everybody?
When can you supply the 8 recruits which are desperately sought in Surrey, for instance, 8, 12, 16, or 32, or the 115 for the RCMP detachments here?
Well, as I say, we'll be up to full strength in British Columbia by the beginning of April. As a matter of fact, in December, one of the real problems that we've had this year is that as a result of the Turkish embassy incident in Ottawa, we've moved in members of the RCMP to provide protection for foreign diplomats stationed in Canada. And what we have been doing now is we're in the process of bringing these people back. In December, they'll be brought back. And by April, we'll be up to full strength in British Columbia.
You don't have to hire RCMP uniformed constables for Ontario or Quebec, do you?
I'm sorry?
You don't have to hire RCMP uniformed constables for provincial policing in
Not
Ontario
for provincial
or Quebec.
policing, but we do for federal.
Only for federal statutes.
That's right.
Is it correct that British Columbia hires 1/4 of the total uniformed staff of the RCMP?
I think that figure's probably correct.
1/4. Is it not a fact that it's almost impossible for a unilingual Anglophone in British Columbia cannot at the moment apply for the RCMP
No, he can't
successfully?
apply. No, he can apply, and he can apply successfully.
What are
And
his
indeed, the
chances
figures will
of
bear
being
that out.
accepted?
Depends on his qualifications.
If he has a university degree, is female, Native Indian, or is bilingual?
Well, I don't know whether, Jack, you're saying that somebody, for example, that somebody who's a female from British Columbia is discriminated against. I don't think so. I think it is appropriate, and people do say to us that females are underrepresented in Canada's National Police Force.
Agreed.
They do the job. They have to meet the same criteria as anyone else, and I think that they've proven that they've more than carried their share of the load. There are a number of instances where members of the force have said to me, it's been a tremendous asset to have them. Let me cite 2 of them. One is in the case of undercover drug operations. It's ridiculous if you say that only a male could be involved in that.
Not saying that at all. I'm merely pointing out that there is considerable discontent in British Columbia, not about your bilingual policy, but that as a matter of fact, it's impossible for a unilingual Anglophone from British Columbia to apply to our national police force and get in as of this moment. Am I right on that?
No, you're not.
He would be at the very bottom of the heap.
No, he wouldn't be at the bottom of the heap. It would depend on his qualifications.
He's not native, he's not female, he's not francophone bilingual, and he's English unilingual. He cannot get in.
Well, and you know, if you say, you might have added as well the issue of whether or not he had a university education.
I forgot that
If you're saying if a person doesn't meet the various criteria that you're looking for, is this a disadvantage? Yes, it is.
I'll try it another way.
But let's take a look at each of these criteria. Is it a good idea that people entering the National Police Force should be university trained? I believe it is.
Of course it is.
Should we be bringing native members of the force up to some reasonable level? Sure we should. Women?
Of course you should.
Sure we should. Should we ensure standards of bilingualism across the country for the national force? Sure we should.
Sure you should. But what about your proportions? When you don't police Ontario or Quebec, and you only do federal policing in Ontario or Quebec, the vast bulk of the population of the country, should you be aiming for 20% of the force to be bilingual by 1996? And is it correct that 40% of all positions now must be created by attrition, must be filled by francophones?
Jack, first of all, the figure isn't 20% have to be bilingual by 1996. I think the target that's looked at for bilingualism is 15%.
15% bilingual, 20% francophone.
And I might add that it's not simply Quebec where you have bilingual people or francophones.
Oh, no.
For example, in New Brunswick, very significant percentage of the population there is francophone.
It's possible not to be in any way racist inclined when one realizes that in this vast province with 3,500 RCMP, it is virtually impossible for a unilingual Anglophone without a degree to be hired by the RCMP.
Well, you say for a unilingual male Anglophone who's
no degree, he can't get in the force.
Well, you know, let's go back on this again.
But that's the truth, isn't it?
You say to me that you accept the criteria that are being used, that it's important that we give some priority to making the force representative.
Of course, but right at this moment when you're 115 short in BC, we've got 38 experienced police officers who could fill some of these vacancies now. Why don't you take 8 of them and let them in to stop the crisis in Surrey?
Well, if there is a crisis in Surrey, I don't believe that there is a crisis in Surrey.
Biggest detachment in the country.
I think what I can say, though, is that by the beginning of April, we'll be at full strength. And certainly by the time that Expo 86 gets underway, we're going to have all of the personners in British Columbia that we need.
Who changed the policy that ex-officers must not be hired again? Was that Mr. Yu or was that Commissioner Simmons?
Commissioner Simmons.
That's his policy?
Yes, and I think it's an appropriate policy.
And you're not going to support any change of that policy?
No, it's not a matter that they can't be hired again. It's a matter that they would have to meet the same criteria that other recruits would have to meet and not get special treatment.
And if you're unilingual Anglophone, you're down the tube?
I don't think you're down the tube. The fact is we're still hiring male unilingual Anglophones.
All right. Mr. Smith asked me this morning to ask you a specific question. Are you prepared to hire any of the 38 officers willing to rejoin the force for the vacancies in BC?
We're prepared as long as they meet the criteria. If people
But your answer's got to be no.
If people are saying, are we prepared to give special privileges to one group who are former members of the force, the answer is no. I think they should meet the same standards as would apply across the board for anyone else.
Seems kind of stupid when you're so short of people and you used to have a policy of bringing in these ex-policemen, at least one of whom has only been off for a year. Some want to come back, of course, because of the economic situation. Maybe they made a mistake leaving the force. But they are experienced, they are good police officers, they can go anywhere in British Columbia at least, and they've no hope.
The issue is very straightforward, though. It comes back to, again, what you agreed to, and that was that it makes sense to upgrade the qualifications. Then, if you've upgraded the qualifications, do you give special rights to one group, which wouldn't apply to others? I think that would be unfair.
And I'm not being unfair, am I, when I say that, well, I agree with all your propositions. Fact remains is that unilingual Anglophone RCMP officers fully trained cannot presently be hired to fill any of the vacancies.
You're not being unfair, you're being wrong. You're being
no, I'm being
incorrect.
accurate.
The fact is we are hiring unilingual Anglophones at the present time.
Very small proportion of them.
No.
Priority to Francophones.
Not priority to Francophones.
You're increasing the number of Francophones in the force.
The number of Francophones in the force is seriously underrepresented if you look at any national norms. There's no question about that. But does this mean that a unilingual Anglophone can't be hired? No. And indeed, it'd be a disservice to people, Jack, to suggest that were the case.
But it's impossible for them to be considered at the moment because of the lack of the proper criteria.
No, that's wrong again. It's false to say that no males are hired. It's false to say that no unilingual Anglophones are hired. It's false to say that somebody who's non-native won't be hired. And but
At the
real
present
concern
time,
here-
I am reliably informed, and I can't quote you my source, only applicants who are bilingual, female, native Indian, or university educated are allowed to write selection examinations.
Well,
the remainder are advised by form letters that their applications have been suspended, i.e. ignored.
You're reliably informed by me, and you can quote your source that that's wrong.
I must accept the word of the Minister on the technical interpretation of the various regulations, but with due respect, I still say, until somebody proves to me otherwise, that it's virtually impossible for a unilingual Anglophone trained RCMP officer who previously would have been allowed to get back into the force to get anywhere near the front door now. We'll continue with it. It's not a fight against bilingualism. It's a fight in favor of common sense, sanity, fairness, and equity. I'll be back with Peter Bazowski, who by chance is a former Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP, after the break. Peter Bazowski, and before I turn to you as our new ombudsman, I can't resist one question, even if you don't want it. What do you think of not rehiring 38 trained RCMP officers in British Columbia when we're short 115 right now?
Well, Jack, during all the years that I was in the force, we always welcomed back any of the people that left the force. In fact, we referred to them as remounts. And these people invariably came back much more settled. As you know, a lot of the people come into the force at 18 or 19 years of age, and it's not unusual for them to think that faraway fields might look a little greener after they've been in a few years. But we're always glad to get them back because they came back as experienced policemen.
Right, they'd been out in the real world as
right.
adults and came back with an extra leavening of common sense. So you always, where it was suitable and where they were clean as a whistle, you would hire them as remounts.
Yes, indeed. In fact, one of them was Commissioner Harbison, who was the commanding officer of BC. He came back as remount.
Harbison was a remount.
And became commissioner.
And if Harbison was a remount today, he couldn't come back and couldn't have become commissioner.
I guess not.
However, we'll leave that for the moment. Oh no, what was it you said when you quit as Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP? Do you want to go back that far?
Well, I said a lot of things when I was interviewed when I was leaving the force. I think the only thing that got picked up and got national news coverage was that I felt that the merit principle could suffer, which had served the force very well for many years, if any sort of a quota system was introduced into the force. And that was with specific reference to bilingualism. But like yourself, I'm not against bilingualism by any means, Jack. My children all went to French school when they were growing up, and we went to great pains to ensure that they themselves would be bilingual. So,
but your point is
I don't want anything I say to be interpreted as being anti-bilingual.
No, but the point is that the system based on any form of quota tends to hide the merit of people who can be neglected and shoved aside.
That's always a possibility.
We'll leave it at that. It's a kind of delicate area in any case. Now, let's go to a somewhat another delicate area. You were known as a very, tough civil servant, Deputy Commissioner of Consumer and Corporate Affairs, and of course Deputy Minister of Health. And when you were appointed to the acting ombudsman position, you were described virtually, and it was not fair, but I want to put it to you, as an ombudsman, you'd be a social credit hitman.
Well, I think that is a very unfair comment, Jack, because I think people must realize that you wear whatever hat you happen to put on. I didn't ask for the job. I would not have accepted the job if I felt that I couldn't fulfill the role of the ombudsman in a fair and impartial way. And I don't think the government would have wanted me to fill this position if they felt I couldn't fulfill that.
Because in fact, as ombudsman, you are virtually under no restrictions on what you can do or what you can say. Am I not correct?
That is correct. The only terms of reference I have is the Act itself, and I get no direction whatsoever from government, either at the cabinet level or any other level.
You have not been appointed as the permanent ombudsman because of what?
Well, partly by my own, because the permanent ombudsman has not been selected yet. As you know, there's a select committee in the process of picking a new permanent ombudsman. And I was asked when I was approached to take on the job on a temporary basis whether I was interested in applying for the permanent position, and I indicated that I was not. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was considered suitable for the temporary appointment.
Because only the legislature by unanimous vote can in fact appoint the ombudsman for the 5-year contract period, if that's what it is.
Well, actually, it's the select committee that has to make a unanimous recommendation to the government or to the legislature, who in turn recommend to the governing council the appointment of it.
How did you find the state of the ombudsman office when you took over from Carol Friedman? I'm thinking, for instance, of unresolved cases. And what kind of weight of a load is there in the office for you now?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I came into the office, the unresolved cases at the end of the month, commencing with the beginning of the year, were running at about 1,500 or 1,600. After the first month, that is the end of July, we had reduced that number to about 1,300. In the second month, it was down to about 1,200, and at the end of September, we're down to 1,100 unresolved cases.
Are you getting as many complaints, and will you take as many complaints from as many sources as the Friedman era did?
Absolutely. There was a slight drop-off in the complaints during July and August, although my staff assure me that that's a seasonal thing and is not necessarily an indication that people weren't coming to the office as frequently as during Dr. Friedman's time in the office. Certainly, it may well be that even the program that Dr. Friedman has on CJOR now may siphon off some of the complaints.
Have you had a chance yet to assess how many of them are absolutely trivial, which can be disposed of quickly?
Well, Jack, we get about 1,000 complaints a month, 900 to 1,000. Of those, about 500 plus are non-jurisdictional complaints.
You mean 500 cases come to you when it's not your bailiwick to cover, such as?
Well, a lot of them refer to federal authorities, for instance, and we have no jurisdiction to deal with them. But I would like to point out, though, that even though these complaints come to our office, I think we serve a useful purpose because our people are able to refer these people to the appropriate sources to deal with their complaints. So I think we're still providing a service to the public.
In other words, you give if somebody comes to you of what's a federal, say, information query, you'll send them to the right source.
That's right.
Or the Federal Human Rights Commission.
Whatever.
What about lawyers?
What about them?
Do you yet handle complaints about the legal profession?
No, actually there are 11 sections in the schedule at the end of the Act identifying the various authorities that the Ombudsman might have jurisdiction over, and only 2 of the sections have been proclaimed to date, which include such things as ministries and other government authorities, crown corporations, boards. The list of groups that have not been proclaimed includes professional associations such as the bar, the College of Physicians.
Lawyers, doctors,
yes,
dentists,
schools,
professional engineers, schools.
Hospitals and hospital boards and universities. Actually, the list is quite
extensive. Are you campaigning already to have all these jurisdictions open to you?
Not at all. First of all, I think this would be a decision very much for the government to make, but I think people should be aware that it would only require an order in council to proclaim any of these sections, and therefore I think it's incumbent upon these various authorities to ensure that they police their own professions or whatever well, otherwise one might expect a public outcry to have the office of the Ombudsman involved in these.
Fair enough. I'm going to do another segment with Mr. Bazowski. Might take a few phone calls as well, and I have some questions for him after the break. Tell me, Mr. Bazowski, how is the ombudsman appointed in other provinces? Do they have the same system whereby a legislative select committee of the legislature comes up with a unanimous recommendation?
No, as a matter of fact, that's an interesting question. As you know, there's a lot of controversy about my appointment because it was by cabinet. Well, the truth of the matter is, inferring that I was appointed by the government, the truth of the matter is that in most of the other provinces, all but one province, the ombudsman is appointed by the majority vote of the legislature. In Quebec, it must be a 2/3 vote. But in every other province, it's by the majority vote in the legislature.
We're the only ones who have the pristine system whereby it must be unanimous vote.
By a select committee.
Select committee. And
Other than one province. The only other province where there's a permanent legislative and privileges committee, standing committee, and that's in Manitoba, and they too have to come forward with a unanimous recommendation.
Will you use the Friedman device when you come across a hot story and you can't get cooperation from the government of going to the public with your problem?
Sure.
Or straight to the legislature with your problem if the House is sitting?
The Act provides that I can go to the authority in the first instance, or I can go by way of a special report to Cabinet. If I don't get satisfaction there, I can go to the Legislative Assembly, or I can go directly to the public, and I can do that in the first instance. And this is all provided for in the Act. So
that is really your best weapon. It's not if you come across a case of real bureaucratic interference or roadblocks. Friedman used to make a great point of going to the courts. Will you go so much to the courts as Friedman did, or will you tend to go more for publicity?
Well, I think that when Dr. Friedman went to the courts, it was usually over a jurisdictional dispute. And in fact, if you have a jurisdictional dispute, that is claiming jurisdiction that the authority claimed you haven't got, that's the only way you can resolve it. I don't anticipate any situations at the present time where I'd have to go to the court.
Now, go on.
Well, I think, Jack, one thing must be understood is that although the ombudsman and his staff have tremendous investigative powers, in fact, powers that the police would envy, because we can question people under oath, we can go into any office without a search warrant and demand to see documents, demand to see any employees in the authority, past or present. So the investigative authorities are quite tremendous. But on the other side of the coin, the ombudsman has very little enforcement powers, and really his enforcement powers are in the form of persuasion. And I think that I would always try to negotiate to not become too controversial except as a last resort, but certainly would not hesitate to do so. And I think my staff have indicated to me that they think one of the reasons that we have been able to resolve so many of the outstanding issues, cases that were there when I arrived, is that we are getting better cooperation from all levels of government at the lowest level.
Apart from that, you've been going through the outstanding case logs and using persuasion.
That's correct.
You seem to be quite shocked by your discovery of the immense powers you have as ombudsman, more than a police officer has in the investigation of a crime, of course.
Well, I'm not shocked by these powers, Jack, but I think one must understand that although we have tremendous powers of investigation, we don't have the power of the court to compel people to do things. And therefore, I think it's important that we try to get the cooperation of the bureaucracies and the government and the people in the bureaucracies. Because in the final analysis, we don't have the power to make them do anything if they choose not to, providing they're prepared to withstand the pressures of public opinion.
Have you made any major staff changes in the ombudsman since you took over in the office?
There have been a few minor changes, Jack, but by and large, I'm very impressed with the staff that I found there, and some of them were on temporary employment, on contract and that sort of thing, and some of those people have left. We have hired 3 new people since I came into the office, and I would say about 10 left because their contracts ran out and they were going back to school or whatever.
Have you cut the staff at all?
Well, when I came into the office, we had, as I say, about 10 people more than we have right now, but some of those people would have left whether I came there or not.
You recently made a trip around the province. Did you find the Ombudsman's office properly understood in the backwoods, in the smaller towns, shouldn't say backwoods, the smaller towns of British Columbia?
Well, actually, Jack, that's one of the things that surprised me. I've gone through the Kootenays, and more recently, just last week, I was up in Chetwynd, Dawson Creek, and Fort St. John. And it surprises me how little people know about the Ombudsman's office and what it is there to do for the public. This is one of my reasons to go out. I want to bring the office of the Ombudsman a little closer to the people outside of the greater Vancouver area.
And down here, most people have got access to various agencies or assistance in some way or another, but you find up country not the case. Well, I trust, Mr. Bazowski, you're a remount yourself, really, aren't you? Mountie, out of the mounties, and then back into another job. We'll call you Remount Bazowski from now on. But if you need any help to persuade people, give me a shout, will you, please?
I'd be glad to do
Best
that.
of luck to Peter Bazowski, British Columbia's acting ombudsman. And I'll be back with a discussion about the problems in the Sikh community with Ujjal Dosanjh and Manmohan Singh after the break. It's no exaggeration to say that many people in British Columbia have been very concerned about the sporadic, intemperate behavior and violence and the occasional beatings among the Sikh or the East Indian community, I'm not quite sure which, we'll find out, in British Columbia. And I have two spokesmen here. I have Ujjal Dosanjh, who's a lawyer, and I have Manmohan Singh, who's from the International Sikh Youth Federation. Now, who's going to give me the score? How many opposing factions are there among the East Indian community, and could you break them down for me?
Well, there are basically two factions, if you want to term them factions. One is a group of people, unorganized, a large majority of us, who simply say we want to have nothing to do with the problems in India. Indians are well equipped to settle those problems, Sikhs or Hindus or Muslims, but our problems in BC and in Canada take precedence over problems in India, and we don't want to interfere in affairs outside of this country.
Now, am I right that there are about, how many East Indians are there in the province?
Well, I think over 150,000 perhaps.
And how many of these would be Sikhs?
Well, I think 60 to 70% at least would be
So
Sikhs.
we've got 75, 80,000 are Sikhs,
Approximately.
Right? And you tell me the greatest proportion of these people are peace-loving, temperate, quiet
Definitely.
individuals who want nothing to do with the troubles in Punjab.
They're just ordinary Canadians, Jack.
Well, I'll ask you first, why has there been trouble?
Well, we have a group of people, and which has organized itself into 3 or 4 different organizations, who are bent upon creating problems on the basis of their desire to separate Punjab from India on a religious division. And what we say to them is that they are welcome to have their views, but they should behave peacefully here, and they should not utilize the resources of this community or the temples of this community to cause unrest in India or here.
Now, here is Manmohan Singh, the International Sikh Youth Federation. I presume that you endorse these moderate views of Mr. Dosanjh.
Jack, I definitely endorse the peace and the harmony in the community, and there should be no violence, and there should be no provocation.
You're against all violence?
Absolutely against it. And this is happening since the attack of Golden Temple. We are facing a very bad situation here, not because of the trouble in Punjab, but the people here with selfish motive, trying to get popularity in the political field and with the government of India, stirring up and giving provocative statements in the news media and causing tension and hatred in the community.
All right, let me see if I can understand you. We're all aware of what happened at Amritsar, where the Indian government sent in a military force to clean out the sacred place of the Sikhs. Am I correct in that?
That's exactly what it was.
That's exactly what happened. Now, that happened in India. How does that reflect itself here? I mean, who wants to fight the battles of Amritsar here?
It's not a question of fighting battle Amritsar here, but it's a matter of religious matter. because Indian government desecrated the Sikh temple, the holy shrine, and not only Golden Temple, but 40 other Sikh shrines same time. And other thing which they did, they barred the whole media of the world to go into the Punjab when the operation was taking place.
I saw some of that on television.
Not when the operation was there.
Okay, they were agreed that was done, but how does that affect life here if everyone is moderate and nobody wants violence?
It's because it's a matter of religion. It's a matter of faith in God. And the house of God of Sikhism has been destroyed and desecrated. And every Sikh anywhere in the world is upset and concerned about the desecration. And they want the honor back which have been taken by the Indian government.
In other words, what you're telling me, now correct me if I'm wrong, because I am a moderate person in all things, you're saying that Sikhs outside of India
Yes, sir.
must fight for the Republic of Khalistan.
Because we have left.
Is that right?
That's right.
Now, okay, stop there.
Well, that's exactly where we part company. What I say to them is they can have their views on Khalistan, but they should not be spreading violence, terror, and hatred in the communities here, because our first issues are that concern us in Canada.
Now, we understand that quite clearly. Are you in favor of the establishment of the Khalistani Republic?
No, I'm not.
You're
That's none of my business. I'm a Canadian citizen.
You're in favor of the Indian government looking after the affairs of India?
And the people of Punjab looking after the affairs of Punjab in India.
Now, you part company on that issue, don't you?
No, I don't, because with Indian government, for 40 years, we put up with the Indian government after independence. And we did everything to make India great in every way. But they always interfere in our religion, in our politics, and brought to a point they attacked our holiest shrine, and that's the climax of it. And the Sikh nation don't want to live under the rule of Hindu domination after that incident.
The Sikh nation in India.
That's what it is.
If you are obviously a Sikh here in British Columbia, are you living under the domination of the Indian government or the desecration of the temple?
Jack, we stand behind every Sikh which is in Punjab, now in bondage under the government of Indian rule and the military there.
Fair enough, but why should this cause violence here?
There's no violence here. It's just being portrayed by some people for their personal advantages. And the last 1 year, you tell me one instant a man has been charged, arrested, or have been condemned by the court for any violence. It's just a very unimportant thing, like somebody's slip up from in the market or get some hurt somewhere. It's always blame on the Sikhs for no logic, for no
not
proof.
blamed on the Sikhs, it's blamed on the Sikh fanatics, isn't it? not?
Because it's not there. It's just a cook-up story. Some people are
In
just...
other words, nobody has been arrested, nobody has been charged for assault. People who fall down and get injured blame it on the Sikh fanatics.
That's the problem
Okay.
here.
Is that your view?
Well, my view is that what Mr. Manmohan Singh is saying simply that if crimes are committed and nobody's caught and convicted, then the crimes don't happen. Now that's a nonsense view as far as I'm concerned. People in the community have been victimized. In the last month or so, 3 or 4 assaults have taken place. They've been covered by the press largely, and we're all aware. And anyone who has opposed the violence and the terror in the community, these guys are welcome to have their views. All we're saying to them is, leave the places of worship alone here. Leave ordinary people living in Canada as they have been for the past 70 to 80 years that we have been in this country. Please don't disturb our lives. If they want Khalistan, they can go back and fight for it.
Seems reasonable.
Jack, I tell you, the words can hurt more than the punches and blow. And the amount of damage Mr. Ujjal Dosanjh has done to our community in Vancouver and in the Sikh temple have been right from the attack of Golden Temple. And the provocation is called as, look at the statement we made from the temples of our temples and the society signed here. I underlined that, what kind of remarks he gave about our leader and the Sikh in Vancouver who has totally peaceful, nothing to do with any violence. And this is a provocation which is causing us. And then he brings the thing because he's very professional to...
What are these? Are these extracts from quotes on various radio stations and television
That's what it is.
stations? And you were complaining about certain people being allowed into Canada, whom you called goons.
That's right.
And do you believe that our immigration laws have been perverted in some cases?
I think they are being perverted right now. We don't know the 8 people who came and sought training in British Columbia. We don't know whether they're a Canadian citizen or landed immigrants or people from the States.
This is remarks
Where are they from?
of a Link newspaper which is published by a Hindu gentleman, Pramod Puri, about these moderates, what they're doing in the community. And I brought that headlines just to show his personal comment.
Why would you tell me what somebody says in a newspaper in the Punjab? Is this in the Punjab?
No, it's in Vancouver. It's right in Vancouver. It's a local newspaper of a leading community newspaper.
All right, then just let me get something clear now. We're going to talk, I see in my research here, which may or may not be right, that they, whoever they are, now control, there's a fight to gain control of 1, 2, 3, 4, half a dozen temples. I want you to explain the importance of temple control to me after the break.
See,
Why are the temples so important? Why is there a struggle for political factions, for your political faction to control all the temples in British Columbia?
that's a very interesting question.
But what's the answer to it?
The answer I'm going to give you, a substantial answer and real answer. Before the attack of Golden Temple, these temples in Vancouver were used as a political purposes, and the religion was left behind in every way. People could go into the temple in front of our holy Granth bareheaded, which is totally prohibited. They can go under the influence of liquor, nobody check them. They can get marriage done the style they want in the temple.
You feel that those, quote, moderates were breaching all the tenets of your very strict belief in your faith?
In temple.
Okay, well, that's one thing. Now,
Well, Jack, let me say, this is exactly what Ayatollah Khomeini has been saying in Iran. I mean, people here have lived over 100 years. Traditions change, people change. Those people who built these temples were as religious as anyone else. Maybe they didn't wear turbans. The issue is not whether you are more religious or less religious. The issue is whether you are using a religious cloak to create violence and fear in the community.
and what do you say to
And
that?
I say that International Sikh Youth Federation and other organizations that have links with them have created fear in the community where nobody's willing to come and talk to you openly as I'm doing. There are very few people who would stand up because they're afraid. And that's the issue. What we're saying is that the community at large, the Indo-Canadian community, majority of the Sikhs are being suffocated and their freedom of speech is stifled. In fact, their freedom to move around freely is being stifled because they have to watch their back all the time.
But what, you mean what's the back physically?
Physically, there have been 3 or 4 attacks in the last week, in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Now, how do you get control of a temple to change the way it operates?
Well, I'm not interested in the control on temples. But let me tell you what it means to control temples for these people because they're seeking control of the temples. What it means for them is that they'll be able to utilize the resources of the community. There's lots of money at the temples. The temples have a lot of people who simply go there and pray, donate money. They may have nothing to do with Khalistan, but how that money is used, whether or not it's accounted for, depends on those who control the temple.
All right, how many of these temples are under the control of people whom you would call fanatics?
Well, so far, majority of the temples have been under the management of moderates. There's been one recent example of Surrey last week reaching an accord with the militants or the fanatics for fear of violence. They simply said, we give up. We're fed up and we're tired of having to face physical fear every day, and we're not going to run. Had they run in the elections, they would have won, but they couldn't find 11 moderate people to stand up and face that violence every day.
Isn't that horrible for him to say that? Is he telling me the facts? He says that in the temple in Surrey, where the vast moderate majority could have kept control of the temple and its money and its services, they could not find 11 people to stand because they were afraid.
He is trying to prove the law and order of the country have been taken over by the Sikhs or the International Sikh Youth Federation in Vancouver. It's a silly remarks. The police can control anything happen here illegal.
Who?
The police, the RCMP.
Not within an ethnic community so easily. It's very difficult in an ethnic community. Let's be quite honest about this.
But I tell you, the amount of police is involved into the activities of temple is unbearable, and they know who is the trouble creator and who's causing trouble, and that's why none of the Sikh have been charged so far in any of these violence, so-called violence, because there is no violence. It's just pushing and shoving. When the people get excited, they talk wrong at a wrong place. In temples, the religion is the priority, not a politics. But these moderates have kept the politics priority in the religion.
Is there an atmosphere of fear created by by zealots. I would regard you as a zealot. You're a very dedicated Sikh, and the whole center of your existence is the injustice done to your faith in Amritsar. That, to you, is the most important thing in the world. I'm not criticizing you.
Thank you.
But that is correct, is it not?
That's 100% correct.
100% correct. So the entire efforts of the Sikh Federation are to use monies and propaganda to fight the battle in India.
Not that. That's a wrong concept. The idea is to make the religious pure of the fiction of a Hindu influence into our religion, which has creeped into it, and people could walk into the temple bareheaded. We want to stop it. And that's where the
Back to the old religion.
No, it's a basic of any religion. There's some fundamental in any church.
You're
anything.
a fundamentalist.
We got to have some fundamental to start with it and some principles.
Mr. Manmohan Singh says that he wants to keep temples as religious places. In the paper yesterday, he is quoted as saying that they're going to now use all the temples to create a state of Khalistan in India. If that's not politics, I don't know what that is. And secondly, he says that they want to purify the temples. Well, that's exactly what Ayatollah Khomeini is doing to Iran, and I resent that kind of nonsense for the entire community.
What is happening here, Mr. Ujjal Dosanjh stir up any news come, here's the highlight of that one, sir.
Oh, yes.
He stir up anything which happened in the religion or in Sikh faith. He gave a counter statement and provocating statement and put the whole community in two groups.
Said the accord was forced on the Surrey temple members. Gosh, he is moderate, isn't he?
But if he's a moderate, but he is not a religious man, and that's the problem. He's a moderate, he should keep out of the temples.
No, not a religious man by your standards, but maybe by somebody else's standards. You are not God. Is he God?
I just hope that Sikh Youth Federation and other people associated with them stop playing God, and they've been playing God for my community for some time.
If I had to talk about Christianity, I better be a Christian. If I am not, I should keep out of it. And if I still talk, I am looking for a trouble. And this is what is happening.
There are many shades of Christians. There are many people who call themselves Christians with whom I would not be seen dead.
But in our case, it's not. We have a 10th Guru who gives the final codes of the Sikh religion, and
You
that's
see, what I'm afraid of here is double talk, to be quite honest, you know. You are an Indo-Canadian.
That's what I am.
You also happen to be a Sikh.
I was born and raised in a Sikh family.
But he's no more a Sikh.
With honorable traditions.
He is no more a Sikh.
By your standards.
Not my standard, by his own standard.
Let's get back to Khalistan now, and we'll take some telephone calls too after the break. Well, the problem is quite obvious. Are you a fanatic? Yes.
And fundamentals, not fanatics.
Well, you're a fundamentalist.
That's it.
Very firm views. Do you approve of violence in any way, shape, or form?
Not
in
at
this
all.
country?
Absolutely not.
In India, yes.
I don't. That violence is promoted and established by the government of India, not by us. If they can kill our innocent families in front of the army and military, who are the terrorists and who are the people who are causing violence? Let's find out first.
Do you realize what the other Canadians say about violence in the Sikh community, including myself? If you want to fight for the freedom of Ireland, or Iran, or the Punjab, go there and fight. Don't fight here. Would you agree with me on that?
100%, sir.
100%. You agree with me 100% now. You obviously agree with me 100%.
I've been saying that all along.
How bad is the violence in the community? I've been footing around this morning. You were beaten up once.
I was beaten up in
Why was
February.
nobody charged?
Someone has been charged, and he's standing trial in the middle of this month.
We'll leave
We
that
won't talk
alone.
about that.
Because you had said if nobody's charged, there is no violence.
Nobody's proved guilty anything since 1 year.
But there can be violence without proof. You and I both know that.
Well, it could happen maybe on some personal grounds and personal reasons, not on because of
All
religious
right.
reasons.
The International Sikh Youth Federation, fundamentalist. The World Sikh Organization, is it fundamentalist?
Is fundamentalist.
The Baba Khalsa, is that here?
That's an organization that's here only in name. That's an organization
out.
that's generally in India.
The Dashmesh Regiment. What is that?
It's not. It's just using name somebody. It's not there.
That's something that cropped up around June and July of 1984. We don't hear of it anymore. unless it's convenient to the people who are promoting this kind of.
And what is the name of the moderate organization?
There is no moderate organization. That's the problem. The moderates do not want to organize as a faction to oppose these people. What we're simply saying is we don't want them. We're speaking out. People are afraid to come out and say things.
Well, I'm delicate about these calls, but I'll try the calls. Go ahead, please, to both of my guests, Ujjal Dosanjh and Manmohan Singh.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
How are you today?
Yeah. Go on.
Okay, just a couple of things here. First, religion. We never have any trouble with the Catholics, the Protestants, the churches that have been here. We don't have the fighting. Why do these people want to fight? Why don't they just go to their church and go home and be done?
Well, we've been trying to explain that to you, and there is a struggle for control of the temples, and Mr. Dosanjh says that the moderates are afraid to put up candidates, at least in the Surrey Temple.
And one other thing, Jack, the thing as far as I'm concerned is everybody says, well, according to the Canadian people, let's be very honest. If the Canadian people weren't so afraid to say things like they are, and they always are, if there was a vote tomorrow, the votes would be packed, let me tell you that.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Jack.
Yes.
We're talking about this accord that was signed in the Surrey Temple there.
I'm sorry?
We're talking about the accord that was signed in the Surrey Temple here.
Yes.
Well, there's one real problem with why you're missing why the accord was really signed here. In the present case, in court in Surrey, you have to be residing in Surrey to vote in that temple, right? And at the moment, it's a court case. The people that signed the accord had registered voters from outside Surrey. So the Sikh Youth Federation took them to court, and they were going to lose the court, and they were going to lose all control of the temple.
Okay, hold on now. Have you taken someone to court in that case?
Not to my knowledge.
You say they have taken someone to court in that case?
There's a court case pending in Surrey that basically dwells on the fact that you have to be a member in Surrey, and the votes were illegally registered.
Do you know of that, Hassan?
I don't know.
I have some idea.
Okay, because of that fact, as that court case was to be decided, the basic, what you're calling fundamental people, would have been taken a complete majority vote. And in that case, that is why the accord was signed.
Okay.
And I got one other point, if you're finished with that.
Do we understand that point, Hassan?
I understand. Whether or not the accord was signed as a result of the court battles is unclear. There are court battles relating to almost every temple. What I'm saying, however, is that even if they were in a minority, they would have stood up if they had no fear of violence. And it's not a question of whether it's illegal or legal. It's a question of whether or not you're afraid. That's the issue today.
How do you vote at these temples? By show of...
Secret ballot most of the time.
Secret ballot.
Yes.
Well, isn't a secret ballot a guarantee enough of no violence?
Jack, in the past, people have attended to vote at elections and they've been threatened.
It's false.
That's false.
It's false, okay.
It's false allegation.
False allegation, he says, you don't. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I would just like to make the comment that I do agree with Mr. Dosanjh in that the violence should be left in India, that Canada is a peaceful nation, and most people I know agree that the politics of India should be left in India, and if they want their beliefs here, that's fine, but not violence.
Are you an Indo-Canadian?
No, I'm not. I'm Canadian citizen, born here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Bye. I don't like this term Indo-Canadian. What is it really?
Well, it's Indians of Canadians of Indian origin.
Canadian, like you?
Yes.
You're born in this country.
No, I was born in India.
You're born in India.
He become too Canadianized after coming here, you know. Forget about the religion, everything, and just political power is only his objectives. That's what he's fighting for.
Well, Jack, he's suggesting that I'm in this for a popularity contest, which is nonsense.
Not if you're going to get beaten up.
That's right.
Unless you want to be a martyr.
That's right. Well, I don't know what kind of logic he uses.
I don't know what he has in mind, but this is all what is happening. That the things are being stirred up and brought to an angle which is not reality, which is not truth. And always the media and everything being confused, and things are being cleared by many of our leaders and the news media, our community news media. But so far, we are not having any success.
Well, I understand your picture very well. You are an Indo-Canadian. You are a fundamentalist. You believe that anyone who does not wear the turban or follow the old religion as practiced in the Punjab is a backslider and not worthy of controlling temples.
That's right.
That's
And,
right.
and that embraces about 95% of the people in the Sikh religion.
Let's try that one on them. So therefore, 90% of the Sikhs in British Columbia are not good Sikhs, sir.
They are, but what we are saying is the control of the temple should be in the hand who are the pure Sikhs, not the people who do not believe and practice the Sikh religion should be control of the temple, because then the temple is desecrated and other fictions come into the temple.
If he goes to a temple, does he desecrate it?
If he come in the temple as an executive committee member or decision maker, then the trouble will be there.
He should be banned.
He should be banned for participating in the management of the temple. But to enter a temple, perform his worship, it's okay. He's welcome. Anybody is welcome.
But not allowed to run it because he doesn't have the true faith.
He doesn't have true faith. He doesn't believe in the true faith.
That disqualifies 95% of my people.
More after the break. Go ahead from Prince George to Ujjal Dosanjh and Manmohan Singh.
Yes, Mr. Webster, I find myself in a position here where I'm not personally a prejudiced man, but the carryings on of these people and the fightings that carry on, when you read the newspapers and you see what they do over there in India, the killings and the disregard for life, and they carry on here, you can certainly understand why people here become prejudiced against Hindus or Sikhs alike. I mean, up here in Prince George, there's an awful lot of it. Sometimes I defend it, but then you hear this stuff, and I find myself really in a difficult position to even want to defend it anymore.
Well, I hope that it's enlightened prejudice in the sense that you don't want me to get out of the country. You want those who create violence. I'm a victim of the violence. Other people are victims of the violence. 95% of the people want to have nothing to do with that nonsense.
Exactly, but those 10% do spoil it for the rest. And
right on, but it's
they
not
actually
my
realize
fault.
that.
The violence is the only weapon Mr. Ujjal Dosanjh can use against the Sikh community to stir up a kind of a tension and hatred in the community by using violence. Right from the beginning, the Golden Temple was attacked. In spite of showing a sympathy to the Sikh nation, and he claimed to be a Sikh, he took the side of Government of India and projecting the ideas of Government of India into our community and making a tension and division in the community here.
You're not suggesting he personally shows violence?
He personally provoked and he personally propagate the violence into the community in different tactics and ways by his intelligence and his...
In other words, because he supports a moderate line, a political line, you think he is a traitor to Amritsar?
He's not traitor to Amritsar, but he is a traitor to the community here because he is causing provocating statements in the news media, and then we have to counter it all the time.
But to carry on this fight in Canada, it's my belief that the deportation should take place. You people should go back to India and fight there.
Well, I think
don't fight it in our country.
I think we need that kind of treatment because those who are responsible for all the stir-up must be sent back. That's my suggestion as well.
If anybody comes here and advocates the violence in this country for the establishment of the state of Khalistan, I would deport him tomorrow.
He must go out of this country. Who's promoting.
100%.
Jack, let me give you an example. 2 or 3 weeks ago, my friend Manmohan Singh at the Ross Temple is alleged to have said that whoever has opposed the Ross Temple by way of taking them to court, his nose would be smashed. And that man was attacked last week. By who? We don't know. Unknown assailants. Now, who creates violence? You tell me.
What he's trying to tell, that what the statement I give on about that people in the temple are desecrating our temple, interfering into our religious matters, our religious fundamentals. And we must stop it because there's no way to do it. And as far as violence is concerned, this is his own idea.
Do you stop it by smashing noses?
Chiefy, it's not smashing noses. It's only the way of democratic way, which is voting. And
what he said was that you whipped up enough hysteria and enthusiasm that some man who was a target had his nose smashed later on.
Last week. Right? Last week.
That man is not smashed, but he is making a propaganda to get a favor from the Government of India. He claimed 3 people beaten up with a rod and he's just sitting there nicely. It's all propaganda of violence which is being promoted.
No,
this is what it is happening.
It's a man, Hardyal Singh Joel, who was assaulted last week.
He was looking for an assault. If somebody looking for trouble, he finds somewhere or other, and then he make a big picture and a big news.
It must stop, Manmohan. It must stop. It must stop.
Chief, it is always stop. No, look at the...
No. If the Sikhs can't stop it, the community will stop it in due course.
See, this is the man which is known, have a problem at the New Westminster Temple. his name is Chan Paul Gill. When he argued with the group there, our federation members came in bit and stopped the fight. Otherwise, he would have been hurt more than what he was, because
he was speaking against extremism when he was beaten.
That's right.
He was speaking in the religion of Sikh religion, because he doesn't believe in Sikhism, and right in the temple he was speaking.
Jack,
now
may I add something?
Yes.
According to Mr. Manmohan Singh, if you're not an extremist and a fundamentalist and a fanatic, you're not a Sikh. That is hogwash. People, 95% of us, are moderates. We're very progressive people. Our entire credibility is being destroyed by some of these buffoons who go on and proclaim themselves to be pure Sikhs and create problems for us.
Yeah, All I'm saying, more thing.
And here, this man has sat in front of you, my friend Mr. Manmohan Singh has sat in front of you and said, you're looking for trouble. That means anyone who says anything that he or his friends disagree with is looking for trouble. Now, if that's not a threat, Jack, I don't know what a threat is. What I'm saying is the law should come heavy on these people, and the Canadian community, the large community, should come heavy on these people and rid us of the kind of slavery that we've been going through for the last year.
Only you can rid yourself of it.
Well, I'm trying. I'm trying.
You are, but if people won't stand up and speak out, you'll get trampled on in any situation.
I asked one thing, Mr. Ujjal Dosanjh. He is proclaiming a promoter of peace in the community. When he visited, we have 5-6 temples in Vancouver. When he visited the temple last time, and to give his message of peace to the community, because our community get together in temple. When he was in a temple last time.
When were you in a temple last time, he says?
I think I was there about a month ago at the Surrey Temple. There was a wedding. I had to attend.
I'm not talking about wedding. When you gave a lecture or you asked time to speak on the stage.
Jack, to be honest, I'm scared to go to some of the temples and ask for time. I mean, I'm just being very honest and candid to you.
Maybe we need a United Nations peacekeeping force to separate the factions.
It's not a question of separating the factions.
You mean to say he could not go on the temple for last 1 year and never gave his message of peace, but except giving in the media and news media and the television?
Sharon Gill is a moderate. He was beaten up.
At the temple.
At the temple.
And then Mr. Manmohan Singh
when he spoke as a moderate, and you say he asked for trouble because
he is not a moderate. He is a communist, and he is a president of a communist party. And
even they have freedom.
But no, in the temple they can't.
If you're right, I don't know.
I agree. The question is, if you go in some place, you better.
He's not the president of the Communist Party.
No, he's the president of the BC
organization to fight racism.
And that's what they fought on the road, and they showed the maximum violence over
there. Can you not stay till 10:30?
I can.
After the break. The last segment with Ujjal Dosanjh, lawyer and obviously a moderate in the Indo-Canadian community, and Manmohan Singh, International Sikh Youth Federation, obviously an outspoken fundamentalist, right?
That's my duty. That's what I'm doing since the attack of Golden Temple.
In Amritsar?
After that, I have come in the front and helping my community to make the understanding.
Let me ask you this. If Amritsar had not happened, would there be no trouble in Vancouver today?
Jack, I have lived in Vancouver last 16 years and never went on the stage and never gave any statement, and we just went to the temple and pray over things. That's what we're doing it. But after attack of Golden Temple and the influence of Hinduism creeping into our temples here and the infiltration and the adulteration.
This is what causes the trouble.
We got to stop that. That's what caused the attack of Golden Temple, and we had to go to the
then, of course, there was the murder of Mrs. Gandhi.
Well, see...
That was bad, wasn't it?
No, it's not bad. It's not bad. I tell you why. Any man...
You didn't say it was good that she was massacred?
Please, listen, 1 minute. The man who has played with the religion or with the name of God has been punished by the Almighty's power. Look at the Charles I, the King of England, was beheaded because he tried to use church in his favor.
No, that was a conspiracy of a bunch of politicians. That was a different thing. Now, I don't want to chase you around the houses in this, but you're telling me that it was good that the President of India was slaughtered. Good.
Because...
You think it was good?
It was the wrath of the God which fell on her.
The wrath of God fell on her.
Jack, as far as the moderates in the community, and that's the majority, as far as they're concerned, they deplored the incidents at the Golden Temple. They deplored the massacre in Delhi and other places. They deplored the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi because they have some emotional ties with India as well. naturally. And what they say is they want to see people living in India peacefully. More importantly, but we want to see people living here peacefully. The issue is here. The issue is not me or Mrs. Gandhi or the Golden Temple. The issue is whether some of these people are going to allow us to live as Canadians, to bring our children up as Canadians, and to then feel proud of our community as an integral part of the Canadian
The issue
society.
is here.
What do you say to that?
I'm answering his question. The issue is here is the government of India, the agent of government of India, the consulate of office in the government of India is causing all the stir up, all the tension. The people used to work 4 people, now the 20 people working after Golden Temple, they have been brought from India here to provocate and to cause tension and division in the Sikh community as they have done in Punjab, and that's what they are doing it. And they have professional people helping them, like my friend Mr. Ujjal Dosanjh, who is just doing nothing but on the media going. He never give any message to the community in any of the gurdwaras, any of the local newspaper, but he's always after Western media, news media, so he can get credibility in the government of India that he's doing a great job for the government of India.
Okay, I get your position perfectly clear. That you are an extremist and a fanatical extremist, at least on the subject of the Sikh religion, and your joy at the murder of Mrs. Gandhi.
I don't joy because the question is she attacked the Golden Temple and she has been punished accordingly.
Well, no, but I'm really glad you were both here this morning because you've given me a reasonably clear picture of the extreme differences in your views. Here is an Indo-Canadian who is, he's an Indo-Canadian and he is a Sikh, but he is not, by your standards, the right kind of Sikh. He doesn't follow the old religion.
No, that's not the issue.
You are a fundamentalist who believes that it is your God-given duty from now till the end of time to fight to revenge Amritsar.
No.
And create a separate state of Palestine and the Punjab.
The question is...
That's what you want, isn't it?
No, the question is, we want a separate state simply because our religion, our faith is not safe under the rule of government of India, and we cannot keep our identity and our religion as heritage, and there's no other choice. This is the government of India induced to us to ask for.
But let's talk about your faith in this country. Is your faith not free in this country to do as it wishes?
It is free, and it's getting free in all the temples. People know the value of religion now, and that's what these moderates losing control in the temples, and they're crying all over in the media and showing violence and all these sort of things.
And if you have your way, Manmohan, every male Sikh will wear the turban from here on in.
That's the highest position of a Sikh, but they can be without turban, but they must respect a man who's a better Sikh than him. But he can't draw a line, a man shaved off, take his name as a Singh in the center, and he does not practice Sikhism, he does not know anything about Sikhism, and claim to be a Sikh. We definitely oppose that.
There's your problem.
Well, I'm not here to prove whether I'm a more Sikh or a less of a
I'm
Sikh.
talking about fundamental extremism.
That is exactly what ISYF is being accused of in the community.
And has demonstrated.
Has demonstrated that. What we're saying to the Canadians at large and to the community ourselves, that we want to have nothing to do with that kind of hogwash. That is not what we came to Canada for. We came to make better lives for ourselves. These people are taking us back into the Middle Ages, and all I'm asking them to do is they can have their Khalistan. They can think about it. They can propagate their views about it, but not beat people up at the temples, not beat them up on the streets, not threaten them, not be intimidating, and not to tell other people that these people are more holier than the ordinary individuals, 95% of the Indo-Canadians.
Do you want the word in response to that?
I tell one thing, that in temples, the religion will be priority, the basic of 10th Guru will be priority, and the freedom of Sikh nation will be a priority, and that's what the people have to decide, and that is being decided. And only thing what is upsetting these moderates is that they ruled these temples before attack of Golden Temple, and they have no more chance in the temples any further. Nobody.
You have taken over the temple.
We haven't taken. The Sikh nation has taken over the temple.
The Sikh nation, represented by you and your views.
Not me. We just stand behind every Sikh.
Jack, can I say something about the Sikh nation? In India, we're 2%. Sikhs are 2% of the total population. In BC, we're I think 2.8% of the total population. Are we going to have a Khalistan here?
No.
Well, That's the kind of problem we're facing in the end, isn't it?
You may have your Khalistan within the Sikh community or the Indo-Canadian community, but we ain't going to have a
What you're saying
Khalistan
is that if we have Khalistan in the Indo-Canadian community, we're going to be ghettoized as a community and we're going to be made an island unto ourselves. And we don't want to live like that, and that's why I'm speaking out.
We have to speak the truth and the facts. And the only way we can raise our voice as a community, because it's a religious matter, our religion is being destroyed back in India by the government of India, and we have to stand behind our brothers in sport, in democratic way, and the speech of freedom and of exhibition we're doing.
I've listened to you both with considerable. All I want to say is one thing, that continued violence in the Sikh community will bring punishments from the community at large, and that continued violence in any community in this country will not be tolerated by our system of law and order. Wouldn't you agree with me on that?
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And you would agree that it must not be tolerated.
It will not
and
be
that the
tolerated.
full force of the law and the police must be used if there is any continued violence in any community, including the Sikh community.
Got to stop it.
Must be stopped.
Must be stopped.
And you will do your best to stop.
I'll definitely do it, and I'll see that no
And you
violence.
too.
I'm certainly glad that he's making a peaceful declaration.
Even though he's not a moderate, you're a moderate, he's a fundamentalist extremist.
That's right.
And I'm grateful to both of you for considerable elucidation on this perplexing problem in British Columbia, and I shall be back with some news of the injunction at Lyell Island after the break. Mark, what's the score on the application by Western Forest and Beban Logging for the injunction on Lyell Island?
Jack, it's just about ready to be heard in front of Mr. Justice Harry McKay. Interestingly enough, the Haida Indians have chosen to go unrepresented. They do not have a lawyer here representing them. And since the injunction application names all members of the Skidegate band, there is a potential that every person from the band may have an opportunity to speak to this hearing, so it could be some time before the process is over.
That hardly seems practical, but the hearing starts this morning, does it?
In a few minutes, Jack, in front of Chief Justice Harry McKay, and the courtroom is just packed right now.
Okay, we'll hear from you on the noon news, no doubt, or we'll hear the story on the noon news and later in the news hour. Tomorrow. We've got next RCMP officer on to continue the bilingualism problem. Alan Gar, author of Tough Guy, and a couple of people who want to talk about Beyond War. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. precisely.